Trollord Games. Join the fray.
We are. I need to get some semaphores, man.
You guys got us?
Oh, you got us?
There we go. Okay.
All right. We got sound check. All right.
See, we didn't say it. You didn't say it, Steve, and everything got jinxed.
That's exactly right. I didn't say, "Are we live, Chuck?" And it all went to hell. You said it. You said we got to stick to tradition, and I didn't do it. That'll learn us. Yeah. So we are here at GaryCon 13 and GaryCon Ethereal for talking about selling RPGs then, now, and in the future. We'll give it a few minutes, let people wander into the room, but then we'll introduce ourselves as we gain some momentum. And as Jason's pointed out, it's day 2 of a virtual con, and we're all exhausted. That's just sad. It's just something wrong about that. We're headed toward the CNC Braille edition. There you go. An online Braille edition. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. I like it.
The newest technology. The bumps just come out of your computer screen.
Right. It's the best way to do it. All right. Well, let's give another minute or two, let people wander in. So what do we got going on? We got, I'm running a game tonight. Jason, you've got like 5 games you're running?
No, I mean, I personally am running 2, but my company is running 5. Yeah.
Got it. I can't believe Jason is back, appearing online 2 days in a row. Madness.
It's the new world order, Lord Dallas.
That's right. As much as he hates the modern technology, what does Al Pacino say? They keep dragging me back in.
Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Right. It's a very interesting. I mean, this is obviously what we're doing today is actually kind of a perfect, crown to what we're talking about today, because it has so that the whole thing has evolved so very much in the last 40 years, but really in the last 10, it has gone into, like technology does anyway. It starts compounding and just changing so rapidly, so that young gamers have very little. I shouldn't say very little. They have less in common with this stuff that we grew up with, the sandbox games and with sand and actual miniatures and all of that stuff. And it's quite different. And Twitch is a perfect example of where it has gone. When will we see the Monsters and Treasures cover with an homage to the first monster manual? I'm not sure on that, George. That's definitely going to happen. The 2 others turned out so insanely well that I'm going to hit up Jason to do the monster book. Of course, the 5th printing is done and out, and we've still got a bit of stock, not a huge stock, but probably a year supply or so. And I have decided that I don't like, I use the monster book a lot. I run 2 games a week, and I don't like the fairy section like it is. 1, it's gigantic, and 2, unless you know the name of the fairy, you actually can't find exactly what you're looking for, like a sprite or a pixie or whatever. So I don't know exactly what. I kind of want to pull that whole section and then make a book of just fae, leaving some of the main ones, maybe 10 or 15 in the monster book. But I've got some very definitive ideas that I want to do with the next printing of the monster manual, and it will definitely have an homage cover. Homage. How do you say that? Is it
homage or homage?
That's what I keep wanting to say homage for some reason. I don't know why. Monsters and Treasure. It's definitely, and it'll be an homage to to the original one that had like 10 monsters on it. I think it had like a Manicore. I, yeah, yeah, it's a good book, but I mean, it's a good cover. But yeah, we're definitely going to do an homage to that one. I like a homage to that. Yeah, when the sixth printing comes out. When we do the sixth printing of the Monsters and Treasures, we'll do it. No, no. Honestly, and I hate to say this, but our attempt to combine books the way I wanted to failed. I really wanted one massive monster tomb, and it's not. It doesn't have the Tomb of the Unclean in it. It doesn't have the Monsters and Treasures of Erin in it. So we really just managed to combine two, and then the monsters for the Mythos series. And a lot of those monsters for the Mythos series were repeats. So we got some monsters in the duplicate, and a couple of the originals got knocked for the Mythos, like Barghest. If you go into the fifth printing, the Barghest is the one that Brian wrote up for the Celtic book, I think, and it's not the one that needs to be in the Monsters and Treasures. So there's some issues that got to be fixed. Yeah, well, and we can't combine. I can't put any more pages in that book. Yeah, it's too it's too big. We got the binder. We'll just sell the binder. If you want everything put together, here's the binder and go. And what we may end up doing with that binder side of things is redesigning all of our monsters so that everything appears on one sheet, and you buy the binder and it has, it's going to be 600, 700, 800 pages, and you just stuff it. And then if it rips, you replace it, whatever. That's kind of where my head is right now, because the monsters are it's just monstrous. The problem is. That's my Gary pun for the year.
I apologize for not having my sound turned on before you eat the surf. Now you can hear my lovely voice.
Join the fray.
Has the push to virtual games improved sales? Have you had to change your strategy for the virtual tabletop space? So that, with 42's question, let's dive right into this. And 42, I'm going to answer that question soon, but I want to first introduce myself for those just coming over from Gary Con and may not know who we are. Chuck, do you have something?
No, I'm putting your labels up there.
Okay. That was Chuck Babunski, George. I'm Stephen Chenault, CEO of Troller Games, and we started this company back in 1999. We started releasing in 2000. And back in those days, of course, there was very little, if any, digital sales. PDFs really weren't a thing that you were seeing on the market. We still use traditional blue lines, offset printing, all kinds of stuff. And of course, I took over the helm of the company in 2003 when Matt Golden stepped down, and I've been at the head ever since, carrying us into this brave new world that we have been in for quite some time. I got to quit saying that because it's not new anymore. It's been going on for quite a while. And joining me today is Jason Vey. Jason, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Vey. I am a staff writer for Steve. I'm the 5th edition line developer, the writer and developer on Amazing Adventures, all around general monkey, whatever Steve needs me to do. And I also have my own company, Elf Lair Games, which I'm here representing this year. You can see my T-shirt with my game cover on it. It's called Night Shift Veterans of the Supernatural Wars. So I guess I'm kind of representing the brand new startup company end of publishing RPGs in this discussion. So if you want to check out what we have, it's elflair.com, all one word. And I think Chuck's going to put up a link there. I'm running a sale all weekend on my stuff. So if you want to check it all out, then just click on over.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually, so that it doesn't get lost in the noise of 42, and we're going to just, first off, if anyone has any questions about any side of the publishing industry.
You know what, Steve, let me interrupt for a second. Just Dark Light just asked, yes, you have seen my name before Castles and Crusades. I wrote for a bunch of books for Eden Studios, for All Flesh Must Be Eaten, for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have a writing credit in the Unit source book for Doctor Who. I wrote for Palladium Books. So I did a lot of stuff before. Yes, Dungeons and Zombies I wrote. George Spellcraft and Swordplay, because of some through RPG, it is temporarily not available in POD, but it will be available again within a couple weeks.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to jump back so that we don't miss some of these questions, and we'll use these questions to kind of to launch into various aspects. Normally, when I give this panel, I do it in a very linear fashion, starting in the beginning and rolling through. But we'll kind of touch on all of that as we roll, as we discuss this stuff, and try to open it up a little bit more to discussion. So the question was: has the push to virtual games improved sales? Have you had to change your strategy for the virtual tabletop space? The VTT, so we've seen that growth in our VTT sales. We've been watching that. Of course, we've been with Fantasy Grounds for a very long time now, but I never put I didn't put much energy into it. It was mostly volunteers that did. A couple of guys would work that stuff over and get it out when they did. So there's no real company-wide effort to push that. So in the beginning, when we were doing Fantasy Grounds and Roll20, I guess, we didn't see any kind of impact from it. Now, those markets have shifted in such directions that as we're reforming and Tim and Chuck are heading all this up, bringing the VTT material up to speed, getting Dungeon and Fantasy Grounds and their rule set needs to be updated. Then we need all the books over there updated. We need new maps, all kinds of stuff that's going on. So we're hammering through that. So in part, answer to your question, we haven't actually seen the VTT itself improve to the point that we feel comfortable that we can push it heavy. Now, that said, the VTT, our sales are still growing regardless of what we're doing. So that's good. So right now, we're not really seeing a huge switch over from the VTT that's driving sales. We're seeing, and I'll say that with some qualification, we're seeing sales increase across the board on all lines. And that's been going on for about 3.5 years or so. And it hit in a very heavy stride in the past year, give or take. I think that has quite a bit to do with when we released, and we really didn't do this as a marketing gimmick or anything. We released the Player's Handbook PDF for free to let people download it. We had tens of thousands of downloads, and I think that helped drive sales quite a bit. So right now we're not seeing the VTT feed over. We're seeing, and I've been watching the numbers for quite a while. We're seeing digital content sales increase and print sales increase, but they're staying roughly the same percentage of our overall revenue. So as the company grows, the sales increase, but we're not seeing this huge diversification where we're watching a lot of folks move from the print side to the VTT side or even to the PDF and digital side. It's very interesting. It's very fascinating watching it grow like it does. And I think that has to do with right now, and we're working hard to change this, but right now, a lot of our customers are still in our age group, Gen X guys and above, whereas a lot of the younger people, a little bit more comfortable with different platforms, are just kind of learning about who we are. Jason, you got anything you want to throw into that?
No, I mean, I haven't really dipped my toe into the virtual tabletop thing yet. It requires a lot of resources and expense to get a game ready to put on Fantasy Grounds or Roll20. And as pretty much a one-man operation at this point, I see the value of it, but I personally don't use it. So I don't really understand it, and I don't have the resources to put my game up there at this point. So
I like Rathgar's comment. Steven just called us all old, but I did it very nicely. It's funny. Someone posted, Davis and I have just set up an account on TikTok called the Troll Lords, and we're just trying to, moving into this new social media platform, whatever the hell it's called. And someone's thing popped up, and I can't remember the joke, but basically, if you're over 50 or whatever it is, it's over 25, I don't know, whatever it is, you were born in the 1900s, which really, when you say it that way, it's really kind of funny. And we were born in the 1900s. All right, so I want to give a
couple decades to spare.
Yeah, no kidding. I want to give a quick update on Memorial Tomb. We're going to get this question off and on through the whole show, which is great. We're actually doing a show on it Saturday at 1 o'clock, at 12.
It's not streamed. It'll be up on YouTube the following Monday.
Okay, so all right, well, disregard that. So a quick update on Memorial Tomb. The main book is being printed. That should be shipping sometime in mid-April. The box was printed, shipped to me. There was a misprint. They're reprinting it, so that's going to be delayed a week or two. I'll have all those files, everything kind of fixed by Monday, so they can redo that thing. But and at that point, we'll start printing maps, and we are working on giving people an option to go ahead and pay. You're going to have to pay extra. There's no other way around it. To pay extra and get your box set, it'll be like $4 or $5. Get your box set, your maps, and the main book shipped to you before the rest of it's done. I have no ETA on the rest of it at the moment. There's 2 stretch rewards, and then there's a whole bunch of small things I think that go in there. We have a handle on about half of that. But in all honesty, we have been completely swamped with all the projects we've got around here. And Memorial Tomb, as I said when we took over the project, it's going to have to take a back seat to all the TLG stuff. That said, you will have the option, I hope, very soon to have that thing in your hand and start playing, which would just be fantastic. All right, so did we have another question in there? I thought I missed one.
Oh,
something.
I'd like to comment, Steve, on that video. So just so you guys know, he's doing a private panel Saturday with Ernie, and they're going to be discussing for an hour and a half all about the tomb. So definitely check out the video. I'll put it out on social media for you. You got to check it out. It'll be very informative for you guys that backed it, like me. I'm very excited, and I actually know nothing about it. That's why I want to see the video.
I say, will you create an online random generator tool as your customer? I'd really like to see it, especially for my development site. So I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, as in monsters or magic items or creating or all of the above. One of the things where we're pushing hard right now is into World Anvil, and I don't think there's an online generating tool. I don't believe so. But we're moving our content onto World Anvil where everybody can access it. Go ahead, Chuck. Why don't you hop in on that?
We have a couple of online generators that are being worked on by different people, and there's a really good one that's already been done for Treasure. It's fantastic, actually. But I'm trying to work that out so we can do it sort of like a company kind of thing, so everybody can get a hold of it. But yeah, definitely. What was you looking for? Oh, all of the above. Yeah. So basically, digital tools. I know we're working on getting someone lined up to do a character creator online, and then Steve's been working with someone to get us a dice. We're working on a dice generator, like for dice rolling and stuff. So there's several online digital tools we're working on. They're coming along. It'll be there eventually.
Yeah, see, the player maps comes up again. We've talked about this quite a bit. So, and that's let's take that question and kind of roll into this. When we started doing this, and Jason can certainly chime in because he started publishing, or he started writing for publishers back in, when was that, Jason? 1999. So, when we started, really about the same time, and in those days, you created your map, you created your content, you put it in a layout program, had a PDF made. We couldn't even do that. We actually had to send the PageMaker files off to the printer for them to fix and make the PDFs, and then they would print it. Things really weren't layered and all that stuff, but things have changed to the point now that PDFs come with layers, so that you can actually, in Photoshop or whatever program that you're using, you can hide some, show some, what have you. But the vast majority of our stuff, and this includes Amazing Adventures, Victorious, the vast majority of stuff was written and laid out and done before this really was a thing that we were doing during the artistic process. The maps are flat. There's no layers to them. It's art numbers put into it. You might have numbers on some of the layers, like some of the aired maps. And this is one of the things we have to do. We have to go back and revisit the entire line to bring this up to speed so that we could actually have something, a DM's map on the one hand and a player's map on the other hand. And it is a monstrous amount. It is a monstrous amount of work. I never quite realized how much stuff we produced until we had to revisit it. It becomes this nightmare. So that's kind of where we are on that, with trying to get more digital content that's more usable for the end user. With so the DM can have one style of map, the player can have another style of map, and it's a great resource. Chuck's been pushing me to do it for quite a while. It's a fantastic resource, but it is it takes a huge amount of resources to actually bring it to fruition. And Jason actually, and I would advise you, Jason, going forward, is to plan this into because Night Shift was just released 6 months ago.
We finished fulfilling the Kickstarter in June. So
okay, so not long ago. So going forward, You might really want to do layered maps, all kinds of stuff, because it has changed a lot.
That requires me finding somebody who can actually make maps that I can afford to pay.
Yeah, that's and they'll work really hard. It's actually difficult to find people that will do this type of work consistently over time.
But you know what? I got to say, one of the great things about the world we live in now is that there are so many resources available for a startup publisher that are just really high quality stuff. For Night Shift, I spent $100 on a layout program that I actually like better than InDesign. It's called Affinity Publisher. And the artwork in it is largely stock art that I picked up off of Drive-Thru RPG, but it's all really high-end professional stuff from known artists like Brad McDevitt. I have a ton of Brad McDevitt's art in Night Shift. And it's just all out there to use. And yes, you risk somebody else using the same art as you, and that's kind of the price you pay. But the resources that are out there make it really possible to produce a book for thousands less than it would have cost 10 years ago for a new publisher.
Yeah, without a doubt. And just to give some of you guys who may not know how this used to work, when we began, basically you put a book together. You would get a cover, put the idea of a book together. Presumably, you would have the book already kind of ready for the printers, and then you would send the ad copy into the You'd have to have distribution, and then you send it to your distributor, and then they would send it out to retailers and take pre-orders on the book. So this is circa 2000 to about 2008, 2009 or so. But it still is the way they do it, but RPG publishing has changed a lot. And you would wait for your pre-orders to come in, and your pre-orders would come in over the next 90 days, and then you would base your print runs off of that. If you only sold 100 or so, you're going to just stop it, pull, don't do anything, don't print, don't do anything. But if you had thousands of sales, then you definitely would print. You would overprint, and you have stock for the next year or two, depending on how your sales went. That whole model is basically the way it was a model that's been working in industries, nationwide for many, many, many years. But for the RPG industry, it began to break apart in 2005 when the D20 glut hit. There was so much D20 stuff out there. Retailers quite suddenly quit ordering things. That snapped back up the channel. A lot of retailers started going out of business, and distributors they couldn't cancel orders because a lot of them had, especially from TLG, we had a no return policy. So a lot of these orders that they had put, they had to buy. I remember talking to one distributor, because he couldn't sell the books to retailers because they wouldn't buy them, even though they had already pre-ordered on them. He ended up filling dumpster after dumpster after dumpster with RPG books because he couldn't move them, and they were just taking up warehouse space. That model began to change after the glut, when so many retailers went out of business, so many distributors went out of business, and so many distributors took a giant loss in 2005. They stepped back from the pre-order system heavily. They still would pre-order, but just not as much. And as such, as often happens in economic models like ours, Kickstarter had just developed, and it stepped into the fray. And essentially, though, it was never Kickstarter's intent, nor was it the model of Kickstarter to replace the distribution pre-order system. It basically has, because now newer publishers like Jason, he stepped into the Kickstarter field, kickstarted his project. He knows what he's got to print. Distributors and retailers are not relevant. They are, but they aren't. He can now print his book and pursue his publishing via the Kickstarter model.
I still feel like getting into game stores, because even though we're living in a more digital world where fans have direct access to publishers now, I still feel like game stores have an important role to play in our culture. And I think that it's important to try. The distributors still matter, because it's important to try to get into brick and mortar game stores and into other outlets that you can't reach on your own.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that has been lost, and this is completely lost with the Kickstarter model, because the Kickstarter does what it's 30 days or 40 days or whatever. And then it's a fulfillment basis where you're waiting a year or 2 years or however long it takes for the books to arrive. It was very, very different in the distributor days, and still is if you can take advantage of the model. And we still do. TLG is still heavily distributed. When you sell a book, and it goes to a retail shop, even if it doesn't sell, it's this continuous advertising that you're getting. People are continually seeing your brand and your logo. And that's lost in the Kickstarter thing. And especially if you get retailers who really like your game and they start running it in their shop, and then you've got even greater exposure to it. So Jason's right. I mean, the distributor model, as much as it has evolved and changed, and it's continuing to evolve, we're watching, when we started, there was, I can't remember now, I want to say it was like 40 or 57 distributors, and it's less now. It's significantly less now. And I shouldn't say that it's probably more, but they're all kind of becoming very, very hyper-focused on one region or a type of product. And who is it? Is it Asmodee? Asmodee is gobbling up. They just gobbled up somebody. I don't know. It's kind of this nonstop evolution of distribution. But Jason's right. I mean, the stores still play a huge role in it. I don't think VTT, Twitch, or any of that has eroded that role. I think their role has changed. I think those retailers who can't adapt to what's happening aren't going to make it. But that's like in any normal business with new technologies. But I think it's all uplifting all of it. The VTT will uplift stores. The stores will uplift VTT as you get more and more gamers into the entire hobby as it is. Let's see. Kim says, hello, I am curious about your opinions regarding Patreon. Do you find it to be an asset to your company, and do you plan to evolve or expand your presence on that platform? I have found it interesting to see RPG companies utilizing Patreon. Some do it well, others not so much. Jason, and before I dive into that, I don't want to just steal the whole show. Do you want to have any Patreon commentary or?
I have thought about using Patreon, but quite frankly, I don't think that I'm prolific enough to pull it off. I think that's the real trick with Patreon, is you have to be able to produce on demand there to really make it worthwhile for people to keep supporting you on that platform. And that almost requires the ability to be a full-time RPG publisher, which the majority of us are not.
Yeah. So
I have a day job, and I work for Trollord, and I'm doing Elfware. So
and you do freelance for other people too. So it keeps you very busy.
Yeah. Although that's going to start to take a major backseat. Yeah.
It gets to be too much after a while. So Patreon is a good example of what, as the head of the company, I've had to kind of adjust into, because I have feet firmly rooted in the old world soil, if you will. I was very reluctant to get onto Kickstarter. I thought it would be a blip in the bucket and it would never do anything. I remember my very, very good friend, distributor Oleg Gyatsi, kept pushing it, and I was like, "No, this is ridiculous. This is."
You had some epic rants back in the day about Kickstarter.
I did. PDFs too. When PDFs, I remember when, is it Mathis? Is John? I can't remember now. He's passed away, I believe. When he set up RPG Now, he came to me. We were one of the big publishers, still are, but we were a big publisher at the thing that he was trying to pitch. And I was like, nah, this is crazy. Nobody's going to buy PDFs. This makes no sense. So I'm always very reluctant. Even when Chuck pitched the whole Twitch thing to me, I was like, Twitch, what is this? What is this going on? Where's my toggles and my bow? Whatever. But so Patreon is a perfect example of me having to get out of my mindset. Patreon's been around for a while. I've looked at it. I've never quite understood it. Davis was pushing it pretty hard. We need to do this type of stuff. And we actually opened a Patreon account for Trollord Games as a vehicle for World Anvil. World Anvil really has no way to pay for subscriptions and all of that stuff, as I understand it. So we needed a way to set that up. And Patreon worked very, very well. Tim Burns stepped in, set all of that up, set the Patreon account up, and hooked its bandwagon to the World Anvil thing. And I can't remember, Davis and I had now Davis, for those of you who don't know, co-founded TOG with me and Matt Golden, back in 2000, and he still works for the company consistently now. But he was talking to me. Davis is always keeping on top of stuff. Man, I just had a 14-hour conversation with Davis about cryptocurrency, hard wallets. It's just absolutely insane. So he keeps himself on top of where things are. He doesn't really have any technical know-how to make any of it happen, but he knows what's happening. So he's been pushing this Patreon angle where we actually use this as a vehicle to publish all of that material that gets cut, or that he or I or Jason or whoever just write up something because they're bored, and there it sits, never published for all time. And it's good stuff. It's just little one-shots and counters and counter tables, magic items, spells, and what have you. So we retooled Patreon about 2 months ago to have that in it, and also to start releasing sneak peeks at what we're doing, to use the vehicle actually to give the end user just a ginormous amount of content, playable content, sneak peek content, access to World Anvil, all kinds of stuff like that. And we've seen a remarkable growth in Patreon in the last, I mean, it was almost nothing just a couple of months ago, and we're watching it grow quite a bit. So I think Patreon becomes yet another vehicle like, and TikTok too. I mean, I was very reluctant to get on TikTok. It becomes another vehicle that shows how the market is constantly evolving and constantly changing, and we have to keep up with it. It's really our job as publishers and whoever else to keep up with all of this stuff. Wherever the games are going, we have to go as well. And it is a world of difference. I mean, you go back into the files of TLG in the year 2000, and you're going to find, I've got them somewhere, emails that we're sending to my consolidator that goes on to distributors, and orders coming in, pre-orders coming in from these distributors, 32 copies from this distributor, 150 from this distributor. And it's so not like that now. I mean, and Patreon is a perfect example of that, because there's so many different avenues to actually get information out, get games out, and that people are playing on. And I'll tell you, the next thing on my list is Steam. I want a much larger presence on Steam than we have. Fantasy Grounds is there, but we've got to move that. That platform is the world's largest gaming platform in the history of humanity. It's insane what is on there. So these are all these avenues we've got to look at and explore. Did I miss some questions? I'm sure I did.
Yeah. So let me roll back on these questions real quick. George Fields asked, does TLG take freelance submissions for CNC Adventures?
Yes, we do. Get a hold of Tim at product something. Product support controllers. I don't know, something.
I think that's right. Let me see what I did here. No, of course not. I butchered it because I didn't know that I was trained. I probably have a command.
There he goes. But... Steve got fed up and left again.
I'm out. The Patreon question broke me.
All right. Product support at trollordgames.com. I think that's right. And let's see. 42 data squirrels. I don't know why I try to say 420 data squirrels every single time. Hold on. Steve drank Dr. Pepper. All right.
Oh, gotta do
that. So Squirrel said, have you seen a shift in the size of printed books?
No, interestingly enough, and I know Jason's run into this probably, well, I don't know how deep you're into distribution, Jason, but the books haven't shifted because retailers, their store racks haven't shifted. And they still showcase books the exact same way they have for the past 50 years. So if you get a book that's too small or shaped weird or whatever, you have a really good chance of your title and logo disappearing behind the racking. So books have stayed the same. We've seen a slackening in sales and distribution as direct to consumer has grown, but overall our distribution sales are roughly same volume wise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean my night shift book is 7.25 by 9.25, but that was a deliberate choice by my co-author and me, Tim Brannon. We both met working for Eden Studios back in the day, and so it's kind of a nod to Eden, where we came from. It's the same size as their All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Witchcraft and Armageddon books. So that's why we did that. For my next one that I'm working on, which is going to be a sword and sorcery game called Wasted Lands, I'll probably be going back to the 8.5 by 11 hardcover.
Yeah, it's just a risk you run into, and I think you're fine actually at 9 inches or 8 3/4, because most of the shelving's like 3 inches. So, but I remember this guy, I can't remember what, it's been about 2003, 2004. I have no idea what the name of the company was. I can't even remember it had to be Gen Con. And he produced this beautiful game, just a beautiful game that was in this teepee. I mean, it was basically in kind of this triangular pyramid type tent. And it didn't sell because retailers had no shelf. There's no way for them to display it on shelves. I mean, he sold a little bit. One of the most draconian lessons we had about distribution, retails, and sales in general. We released 2 books simultaneously in 2001: The Malady of Kings and what was it? Jibog. I think Zebog, Descent into the Unknown, or whatever the hell it was, Zebog, Dzeebagd. And same book, I mean, the same size, 8.5 by 11 modules. We solicited them on the same day. We sent the ad copy out to the distributors on the same day. And Zebog sold about 2/3 less than The Malady of Kings. And we were quite stunned. I mean, the art was good. It was a good book. So we started cold calling retailers to find out. And at the end of the day, almost all of them said they couldn't pronounce the name. I couldn't pronounce Zebog, so they didn't want to sound silly on the phone, and they just didn't order it. So that you'll see after that, there's no more weird names in our titles. They're all very, very crystal clear, readable titles. These are just things that have you learn as you're publishing. That is actually universal. I don't think that would change. You have to be even in today's VTT market, you have to be very careful how you name stuff. Let's see, what is another one?
Last two purple ones there.
Okay, have you considered working with Wizards of the Coast to produce CNC versions of some classic D&D adventures? I don't think so. I know I have, and I shouldn't say that. And once in a while, it occurs to me to reach out to Wizards of the Coast. They do some great stuff. 5th edition is a great game. Obviously, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, all of that stuff. But I think very early on, it was a very conscious decision. I remember my wife and I sitting down and talking about it when everyone went 4th edition. CNC came out somewhat after 3rd edition, around 3.5, I think. And it was a very conscious decision on my part as head of the company. And I sat down with my wife and talked to her about it, and Davis and whatnot, to not actually work, to not do work with other companies in those days. We're going to go it alone and do it alone. And I'm glad we did. We created a huge IP, and we've got a very recognizable brand and name that's ours, separate and apart from Wizards of the Coast. And I think I probably have that kind of mentality in my head now. Though we do publish 5th edition, although Yahtzee, again, my distributor, pushed pretty heavily for me to do it. He was like, dude, it's so easy. And then when I talked to Jason, because Jason was already doing 5th edition at that point, he's like, no, this is a no-brainer. So we switched, but we actually haven't reached out to Wizards of the Coast. And I think I just have this kind of knee-jerk reluctance to do any of that, to tie Troll Lord games to other companies too heavily, if that makes sense.
Well, especially when you're talking about Wizards of the Coast, because despite the open game license, they're a very big company, a very big name. They're owned by Hasbro, and they're probably going to want some sort of legal ownership stake in whatever they do, which isn't a bad thing. It's just natural for them being a big company. So it's something you have to be real careful about, protecting your own company's IP when you partner up with a much bigger company.
That's a very good point, because you end up getting, the waters get a little bit muddied, and you really don't want that. I certainly don't want that, even though you could reap some major sales out of it, or growth in that direction. It's one of those things that I'm not willing to risk, at least not at this point. Young whippersnappers with their long hair and their crazy PDFs. I'm going back to toggles. Douglas, these buttons, it's too much technology for me. Bring back the toggle. Right. My son had no idea what a toggle was. I was laughing about it.
I'm going to catch up the questions in the stream real quick. Here's the first one.
All right.
We've got a bunch now coming in. Goats will be at the bottom there.
Okay, so I just go to the bottom. I see. All of these ways to interact with customers online are great, but do you worry that sometimes can steal away from actual, oh my good Lord, yes, M5. Oh my good Lord, yes. That is actually a huge problem, because you get sucked into this idea that you're communicating with so many people, and there's so many platforms, but you're not. And we've watched, and Jason has definitely watched this evolution from, and you were much more active on the internet than I was. What came first, signs or message boards? Is that?
I mean, way back originally, you had BBSs, bulletin board systems, back like in the 80s. And then that moved into like IRC style chats, which moved into bulletin board systems, which were kind of a precursor of message boards.
Yeah, so we've gone, and that's pretty, one replaces the other. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I would say so. Although you always have hangers on. I mean, nobody's using message boards anymore, but there's still a couple message boards that are still hanging on.
Ours are still here. I went there about a month ago. There's still people posting. It's funny. I was like, what?
It's like it's like Mumble and Ventrilo and TeamSpeak have all evolved, and now you've got Discord, which is a mishmash of that and like chat together. So it's just an evolution completely, and that kind of communication stuff.
But here's where the problem, and to get to the point of your question. So in those days, and even in TLG's early days, we had a message board system set up, and it was very effective. We actually did the whole playtest for Castles and Crusades on the message boards. I don't know. I have no idea who even set that up at this point, but probably Mac. But it worked very well, and that was it. You went to the message boards, you got to work all day, then you go to the message boards to talk to customers, to whatever, fans, whatever, go back to work. That changes with Facebook. I remember when Peter Bradley, and man, I am so slow on all these things. Peter Bradley texted me and said, "Hey, dude, you need to get on this thing called Facebook." And I went and he showed me his account, and I went to it. I said, "This is ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to use this." So I didn't have an account forever and a day. And I finally got onto it. And obviously, Facebook becomes this thing. Twitter becomes this thing. And that's almost manageable. But in the last few years, it's just exploded in 115 different directions. It's not just one replacing the other. It's now multiple platforms competing with one another, and you're starting to get people who have people who use Twitter, people who use Facebook, and all this other stuff. And it's extraordinarily easy to get sucked into spending far too much time in social media promoting and talking as opposed to actually producing. And it's one of the things that has become a huge part of what I do here, is to make sure that only a certain amount of time is spent in those directions, because it is very I don't know, it's easy. Like the TikTok videos, I'm working on those now. I give myself 3 minutes to get a TikTok video up. And if I can't get it done, then I'm not putting one up. I won't do it till tomorrow, because it's just a 40 second video, and it needs to get out there. I can't spend 2 or 3 hours. And that's what I found myself doing. I don't even know what platform it was now that we were working on. Tim and I were working on. It's YouTube, trying to do the YouTube stuff. I would spend 5 hours in a day trying to get a good YouTube video up. And you can't do that weekly. Social media content, you have to use it constantly. And if I'm not making money off of it, I can't devote, a quarter of the week to just social media, because it doesn't pay. And it's got this illusionary quality about it where you feel as if you're getting more out of it than you actually are. So social media is, it's a tool that is here now that you have. It's just like Kickstarter. In the old days, there was a safety built in. If I put a book together, if just Jason wrote Night Shift and got it all done, and he put it into the pre-order system, and they ordered 2,000 copies, he's happy. He knows he can print it. He doesn't have to risk his money and all that. But if he's got 150 copies ordered, don't print it. Just cancel the whole thing. Well, that's different now, because you can do a Kickstarter, and if you're not careful, you funded your Kickstarter, and you're only printing 150 books or whatever, and your print bill might be extraordinarily large. So there's risk involved that wasn't there now, and the social media has the exact same risk to it.
I like to add to that too. I know I'm the disembodied voice, but the one thing we work on around here, the big thing is that I've learned and to appreciate is time investment versus return. And honestly, I noticed Darklight made a comment about dedicated PR. The world is so convoluted now with all this stuff in our face that the value of PR actually is not what we perceive it to be anymore. There's just so much you're competing against out there that I don't even know what the solution is, to be honest with you.
Well, part of what his comment there is the solution. Dedicated. You have someone dedicated to promotions.
That's true.
But the problem is there's so many platforms, and they're so time consuming. Now, this is what Tim Burns, he works for us. Obviously, you guys have seen him on a variety of platforms. I don't know where he is during this Gary Con. He's kind of made himself scarce. But what's up?
Strangely.
Where is Tim during this panel? He's been working for TLG for 10 years.
Yeah.
But Tim does this, and he just got Google Analytics uploaded on something somewhere. I'm not sure. But he was telling me about it yesterday, and I don't know, whatever. Tim's got it. We're good. And he tries to track where we get feed and where we need to, respond. But because there's so many platforms, you have to respond, and people are posting all day and all night. It's difficult to know when to go in and respond, and how to respond. And then you have to be careful, because the internet can be, it can be a crazy place.
All right.
I never rant about him.
Not you, Jason.
We got a 2-part question there from just another guy named Harry for Jason at the end.
Okay. Jason mentioned he wrote for Eden back in the day. Can you estimate the difference between known IP gamebook sales like Buffy versus original IP like AFMBE, or make a modern day analogy for the aspiring indie RPG writer? That's an interesting question. And with a caveat, when I wrote for Eden, I was just a freelancer. I did not have access to their sales numbers at all in any way. From my observations and from the time I've worked for Trollord and spoken with, because Steve and I have talked about licenses more times than either one of us can count. I don't think there's any doubt that the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game put Eden Studios on the map. I mean, people knew about that company because of that game that never would have found All Flesh Must Be Eaten other than that. Now, that being said, there is a lot of baggage that comes with a license, especially a big license. You have to deal with approvals. You have to deal with, you're allowed to use this photograph from the story, and you're not allowed to use this photograph from the story. And I know when they did Army of Darkness, Embeth Davidtz, who played the love interest in that, she personally had final approval over every photograph of her character from that. So they would have to send proofs over that would sit on her desk for a month until she got around to looking at them. So, and then you have to pay for the license. Like, it's not a deal usually where they just say, yeah, we'll give it to you and you give us a percentage of sales. There's costs involved with a lot of licenses. So you really have to weigh the good with the bad. If you're going to jump into being an indie publisher with a license, be prepared to spend a lot of money that you might not have out of the gate. By the same token, as I think Steve and I have discovered, we've had some fun working on smaller licenses, but at the end of the day, they don't really build your audience. You need a big license if you're really going to build your audience out of one. So my advice is to do your own thing, not jump into a license right away. Keep your eyes open, and if you get to a point where you're financially stable enough to take on a big license, go for it. I mean, we're seeing companies now like Modifius, who's got all these huge licenses, but you have to understand that that company has ridiculous money behind them to pay for those licenses. So that's really the downside of doing licenses. They're very, very costly, and they eat up a lot of resources as well as cost. So I personally think that original is better.
Yeah, I'll second that. And, one of the things we do at TLG is we try to keep everything in-house. We want to own everything and control as much of all the channels as we possibly can. It's one reason that we don't print anything overseas. Everything's printed in the United States because I don't have to deal with customs. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. And licenses have, and we're experiencing this problem literally right now. Jason mentioned the delays. Those photographs are sitting on, those pieces of art are sitting on someone's desk. You get the same delays from the license holder. I mean, their legal team may have to look at something and they got 10,000 other things to do. You're way down on their list. Your project may sit in kind of limbo for months before you even hear back from, the people who own the license. So that all of that stuff, you start walking into kind of this nebulous zone where you don't have control. And I'm one of those people that I like to have as much control over as much as I possibly can, because there's what did Rumsfeld say? There's the unknowns, and then the known unknowns, and the unknown known unknowns, or whatever he was talking about back in the Gulf War. But that's what he was saying is, if you listen to his speech, it's extraordinarily true. You can plan for certain things, and you can plan for not knowing certain things, and you can plan for, prepping for all of this. But there's going to be stuff that comes up at you from left, right, and center and causes delays. And licenses is just one of those things that you can't really plan for. There's so many variables. So build it yourself if you can. Without a doubt.
Another one is Eden still in business? They haven't put out New Conspiracy X in half. I mean, as far as I know, they're still in business. I'm not currently writing for them. I talk to George every so often on Facebook. He's still running his game store. And I know he's doing some restructuring, not in a financial sense, but just in a general sense, looking at where he sits and what his, properties are and things like that. And there's some stuff going on behind the scenes, but I'm really not privy to it. So
it's really, I see people are saying the known knowns, and you really go to YouTube, watch Donald Rumsfeld's speech. It's going to be circa 2003, I think, 2004. It was about the invasion of Iraq, and it was really you got to listen to it about 12 times to understand what he's saying. It's very convoluted, but there's a lot of truth to it.
And we got a question here I'll answer for us for Storycaster. Will TLG build products for Foundry VTT and perhaps Arkenforge? Well, we already have, obviously, Fantasy Grounds. We have Shard, Tabletop. Foundry, it's not official, but it's coming. I'm getting a team together now because it requires coders. There's no copy paste here with that one. That one's a very intricate deal, but it's very popular for a lot of people. People like the open source nature of it, so it's coming. Arkenforge, maybe we've got, after that there's like Mythic Table, Arkenforge, Epic Table. I can go on with like 15 of them. So right now I'm trying to keep it, it's hard. There's just so many and everybody wants it. We've got OBS breathing down our neck for Astral, and I can go on and on and on. But right now, currently the two that are in development are Fantasy Grounds and Shard, and Foundry's on the cusp, so to speak.
Yeah. And by summer, that should change. We should have Foundry Fantasy Grounds done by summer, I think. At least the rule set overhauled. That's the plan. And from that will be rapid expansion.
We've
got
a team. I'm sorry.
Maps. Oh, go ahead.
We've got 2 teams that are testing it as a group, and then I've got 3 GMs right now that are testing as GMs as we do improvements before. We're close to doing our first I guess you'd call it, push to the actual update to the rule set. We're close. There's a lot of cool things happening. Man, that guy Tim, he is coming up with all kinds of crazy ideas. Like I just can't even begin. Some of it's going to be really good. I think you guys will be really happy. And we've got something really special we're working on for Fantasy Grounds. I can't tell you about it because I don't know if we can pull it off, but if we can, it'll allow you to customize just how much automation you want on the table. So if you want to go old school, you can do it. But that's I'm not promising. We're going to try. Anyway.
Yeah. But it's kind of a perfect example of what we're watching happen. Of certainly what TLG has done is we're selling RPGs back in the olden days, back in the 90s, to today, because VTT is a huge part of it's a huge part of the market now. And certainly for younger gamers coming in, I think it's something that will appeal heavily to them. Now, that said, and Jason, I think you'll be happy to hear this if you don't know it already. Now, I'm running quite a few younger gamers at the table, and they aren't asking at all for any kind of digital content at all. Not even dice rollers. They want their dice. I mean, I've never seen these guys didn't have dice before we started gaming. And the proliferation of dice at that table is nothing short of extraordinary because they love rolling dice. So I think that the VTT is going to have appeal to both sides, but I really do think that younger gamers can easily be taught's not the right word, but shown how to play tabletops, and they're going to enjoy it just as much as they do, the rest of it. VTT just becomes another side to this whole thing. Like I said, it hasn't. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead, finish.
Oh, I'm just going to say, as much as it's changed, it hasn't changed. We're just seeing a growth of a new market, and so everything is still growing.
Yeah, and I can say too, I had a similar experience when I used to run kids at the library. They would, and now we didn't have full VTTs when I was doing that yet. That was about 5 years ago, but they did have dice rollers and they did have a lot of like app-based tools for gaming. But these kids would spend all day on the computer at the library playing video games. And when we said it's D&D time, it all went away, and they were raring and ready to go with books and paper and pencils and dice. So I really think there's something to be said for it being a different experience. And there's definitely a world for VTT. There's people who can game with people that they've never would have been able to game with otherwise, thanks to VTT. But it's not fair to say that it's something that the kids are moving towards. Yeah, I think it's its own world. It's its own thing.
Agreed. And one of the funniest conversations I had with one of the young guys, he's 14, and he's getting a handle on the game. And he said, well, when you're a 23rd level wizard and you cast Fireball, do you actually roll 23 dice? I said, yeah, you roll them. And how do you add them up? You just add them up. And now they're doing it. They're at 5th and 6th level now, and they're doing it, and they're getting it. So I think Jason's right. I don't think VTT is going to pull in younger people. I don't think it's going to hurt. And it certainly will. What VTT really does, I suspect, is brings more people together from wide places on the planet that can game now in this new platform. And for those of us who are we have jobs and kids and all that stuff, and we can't get to the table as easily as we used to. I've got a lot of players who come and go because they got jobs and careers and kids and all that stuff. So it gets into this kind of zone. I think VTT will push into that more than anything.
All right, now I'm going to pop the next question in.
Someone asked about a collector's market.
Here you go, last question there.
In your opinion, has the RPG market evolved more into a market of collector's items? Something like Beetle and Grimm seems to work with special collector's boxes for hundreds of dollars. I think that aspect is there. We have, I know, TLG, Goodman as well, Frog God was still very strong sales on just books. We certainly do collector's items. It's something I actually don't like to do. Jason will know that Jason, I've had this conversation quite a few times. I don't like to do collector's items of things. We will, but I prefer just to make a book and move on. But so the collector's market is there, but I don't think it's not a significant portion of TLG's business model. I've heard for years and years, and I'm sure you guys have heard this too. I'm sure you have, Ingolf, that books are going by the wayside. People are getting it digital. I don't see that happening at all. I think that books still sell pretty well. They certainly do for us. And there's just now a digital component to it.
There you go.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the collector's market is definitely there, but it's really more a let's target the quote unquote luxury gamer niche there, and that's definitely out there. There's people that want their high end Wormwood gaming tables with the fancy dice boxes and the Beetle and Grimm collector's boxes with high end handouts. But I don't think that's your rank and file gamer. I think that's a specific sect of collectors. I mean, there is a collector's market. Absolutely. You can't deny it. But I don't think it's driving the gaming market right now.
I don't think so. I think, and it's I've came to the realization a few years ago watching my son play video games. He was virtual schooled, and every time I'd walk by his computer after he's done doing his mess, he would be playing some weird game. And they were this wide disparity of games, from Plagues on the World to Little Circles Eating Other Circles to Dota, whatever. I don't know what it was. Just so many games. And it dawned on me that this new generation of gamers is going to be very much like the generation of gamers from the 70s and 80s who just played whatever game showed up in the game store. You bought it and you played it. You might not play it for long, but it doesn't matter. There was this huge, culture of just gaming. And I think that's back in a huge, huge way. If it ever went away, I doubt it really ever went away, but it's definitely back. And the younger gamers will play just about anything. And I think buying a book it doesn't preclude them from doing it. I think the biggest problem for younger gamers in books is the amount of rules can be intimidating. So I think smaller books is better, but I say that these young guys now are reading these books, and there's 412 Castles and Crusades books at this point. So many CNC books, it's crazy. Let's see, similar to the question about working with Wizards of the Coast, have you considered working with a third-party company such as Cobalt Press to produce adventures or supplements using the CNC system? We have an open license, actually. You can use the Castles and Crusades logo on anything that you want, so long as, one, you have to tag it back to on your website or wherever, Facebook, wherever you're on the internet, back to the Player's Handbook. And there can't be any adult content, any crazy, whatever. Beyond that, the license is open. People can use the logo. I've worked a little bit with Cobalt Press and a couple of projects over the years. Great guys over there, but we don't really have any open program right now reaching out to other companies to move Castles and Crusades. We did Goodman for a little while. I honestly don't know why we quit. I really don't know why. I think we're so busy. I don't even have time to think about other companies doing what we're doing, which is a good problem to have. Any way to get noticed as a small developer? I found gamers are creatures of habit, and getting them to try to game is like pulling teeth on a tiger. Jason,
yes, it is. And it's crazy because I talk about this all the time. I'm really working hard to get my Elf Lair game stuff noticed and people to know it's out there. And it's wild because I have fans of my work from as far back as Palladium Books. And I have fans of my work from Eden Studios, and I have fans of my work from Troll Lord. But gamers tend to they're not necessarily fans of me in general. They're fans of me as a game designer for Troll Lord games. And they like They like the Siege engine, or they're fans of me as a designer for Eden Studios and they like the Unisystem. I have some people that follow me over from place to place, but it's really hard, and I have yet to find a great answer for it. If anybody comes up with a magic solution, I'm ready to hear it. But it's just a lot of grind work. It's getting your name out there. I think a lot of it is painting similarities to the things people like. Like Night Shift uses a system that is old school in a similar way that Castles and Crusades is old school. So I can use that to get CNC players and Amazing Adventures players to take a look at Night Shift. The theme of it feels a lot like some of the stuff I did for Eden. So I can use that to bring in some players to get them to take a quick look at it. That's the best thing you can do, is just you have to find something that those people are going to latch onto that they're familiar with your game. And that's the door you use to kind of try to get them in. But it's a grind. It's a constant grind and constant work.
Yeah, that I'll second that. It's a lot of work, and don't stop working. You just keep doing it. The best thing I think to do, because it is not easy, it's a crowded market. I think someone mentioned earlier, I saw it pop up, I think it was Statler, and said something about appealing to the GMs, because that's kind of the cornerstone of any game table, right? That's the person who's going to run the game. So that's a great piece of advice. Reach out to GMs if you can. Find some 4, 5, 6, 10 GMs that are willing to run your game just on a one shot. And if what you've got is good, then if you're lucky, you'll get some advocates out of that come out onto the internet and will talk you up and whatnot. But a lot of it's just working constantly. And I would recommend you not shoot for the stars. Aim small, hit your target. That's kind of how I go. So go to your local store, start playing in your local stores, try to get a local community up. And if you're lucky, you'll get 1 or 2 advocates out of that'll start talking on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or wherever people are these days. And you can grow out from that direction. The other way to do it is go traditional, kickstart the project, make enough that you can sell into distribution, but reach out to distributors before you run your Kickstarter and see if there's actual room. Put your traditional ad copy together, get your cover work done, get a couple of pages on the inside and maybe a couple of blurbs written by people who have played it. And send that into a distributor and say, I have this RPG I'd like to produce, and see if you can't get some kind of traditional feedback from them, whether they'll pick it up and carry it or not. Because if they do, this goes back to Jason's point earlier that retail stores are still a very viable part of the community, and it's very easy to forget about them in all of the hubbub that is, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and Patreon and Facebook and whatever else. There's still retailers out there slogging it away, just paying rent and selling books, and that's what they do. So it's not easy though. And yeah, go ahead.
All right, I was gonna say, and you know what? If you get an opportunity and you get some momentum, take it. Don't sit there and go, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Go in head first. I was just telling Steve yesterday, the day before, my biggest regret it was like 10 years ago that I put out Spellcraft and Swordplay, and I sold like 500 copies in 6 months. It was like a big success by almost any measure at the time. And, but it was just something I did on a lark. I had no designs at the time of becoming a gaming company. So I just let it go, and it quietly faded off, and it still sells a few copies here and there. Well, here 10 years later, I'm ready to go, and now I'm back at square one because I did not take advantage of that momentum I had back in the day. So if you do something and it takes off, that's your time to make a choice. You're in or you're in. You got to go with it at that point.
And do not shy away from the absolute insane amount of work that it's going to be. If you want any kind of successful business, I don't care if you're selling ice cream out of an ice cream truck or RPGs, you got to work it, and you got to work it hard. And there is a viable market out there. I don't know that you can get rich selling RPGs, but if you think about all the other things people do in this world, the vast majority of them don't get them rich. They help them get through, or they get them through, or they fail. And RPGs are no different. If you've got a really good RPG and some really good art, and you're really enthusiastic, and you can get picked up sometimes by chance, sometimes it's, it's through the grind, whatever it is. And I think the opportunity is there. And Castles and Crusades is one of those things. And Amazing Adventures for Jason. I mean, we produced this game. We broke from our attachment to Dungeons and Dragons. We did not support 4th edition. we went on our own, and it was some bitter, hard years there for quite a while. But it began to pay off after about half a decade. And by 2012, 2013, we began to see a real shift in it. If you are building your own adventure platform, how does your license work? If I want to showcase your products in my game, it's an open license. All you got to do, and some of our content is open. Just reach out to us via product support@troller.com, whatever that email is. Chuck will post it, and we'll get you hooked up. Like you say, we don't get rich with RPGs. What is it been like being based in Arkansas versus closer to the Pacific Northwest? It is awesome. I love Arkansas. I'm a huge fan of Arkansas. And the nice thing is I'm kind of like 12 miles from every major, or 12 hours from every major convention. Origin's about 13. Gen Con's about 12. When Gen Con was in Milwaukee, it was 14. I can get around pretty easy, except to the West Coast. That I can't get to very.
I, on the other hand, am in the Atlantic Northwest, so
Right.
Northeast, the Atlantic Northeast. So
there's no huge cons East and West, right? I mean, the big ones are. I guess PAX now is pretty big.
PAX is pretty big, yeah. And is that in Florida? Well, there's a couple of Wizard World ones.
Yeah, there's a bunch of PAX. They do like 4 of them or something. Yeah. Regional, I can't remember.
PAX Unplugged, yeah, that's what we're thinking of.
Is printing books still more sold than digital copies, or did the proportion of the market change? We've not seen a significant proportion-wise, percentage-wise increase in digital over print. Print still is probably, I don't like to throw numbers out, but probably roughly 80% of what we do, and digital is about 20 roughly, and that hadn't changed in a decade. We've seen both channels grow, but they're growing kind of with one another, and that's why when people tell me that print is dead, I'm like, wow, it's not dead for us, certainly. I mean, it's still, I have to remind those of us, Chuck and Tim, that want more digital content, that the lion's share of what we do is print. I mean, it's the mailroom is constantly shipping books out. I just took a whole load to the post office this morning. Let's see, how do the softcover books compare to the hardcover books with regards to distributors and game stores? Shelf life. Softcover books do okay, but their shelf life isn't great because they start getting ratty pretty quick. Especially a lot of retailers have wire racks. They're going to sit there. They're going to get indentations on them, and the corners are going to get hit. And then the more people thumb through them, your UV coating is going to get peeled off. So anytime you release a major book, you want to do it in hardcover if you possibly can. We do module softcover, but we do very few books hardcover softcover unless it's under 100 pages. If I get about 128 pages, I'm going hardcover. Let's see what else did I miss anything in here?
Yeah, I'm posting. Just watch for the last purple and you'll get it.
Wait, someone said RPGs on an ice cream truck. That's a great idea. Dude, real Goldberg, great idea. I love ice cream.
He's in your game tonight, so you know.
Oh, good deal. So he's going to get some ice cream tonight. So.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
All right, so we got one for me then, it looks like.
Yeah.
I heard you're running a Greyhawk 5e campaign. I've been running myself for a few years, and since Greyhawk's become my favorite setting, I'm curious how you managed to conflate the variances between Gary's description and the modern options provided by 5th edition. I don't think it's all that difficult, to be honest. I had a player who got really angry with me when I started my game because he was really into the 3rd and 4th edition meta plot of Greyhawk, and he showed up at the table with a stack of Greyhawk books. And I told him, you can put that all away. And I pulled out the original box set and said, this is Greyhawk. Nice. And he was really angry with me, but that was the way it was. And the reason that works is because there's almost no mechanics in that original Greyhawk box set. So there's no variances to deal with. And also, I think this comes into play in general when you don't put so much thought into conversion. Just do it, really. You'll find that 90% of all those complicated rules and stats that you see in a 5th edition book, you don't need at the table. I can take almost any system and convert it on the fly while I'm running. If a monster, an orc is an orc is an orc. It doesn't matter. If I have an AD&D orc in AD&D, it's the same as a 5th edition orc in 5th edition. So I just don't think about it. I just do it. And now when we're talking about publishing and game design, to bring this back around to our topic, that's a whole different world. When we did Amazing Adventures 5th edition, I was not able to just convert the Siege Engine Amazing Adventures and do a 5th edition. It had to be redesigned from the ground up because the underlying design assumptions when you're writing an entire rule book are wildly different, even though 5e and C&C play similar on the surface. So, it's when you're at the table, just don't sweat it. Don't sweat the details, do it. If you're getting into publishing, you really need to pay attention to the underlying design assumptions of whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Someone mentioned earlier that, and I think you were joking, it might have been Eat to Surf, that it's easier to keep a book at a table than a laptop. And that's true. And I think that's one of the reasons that PDFs haven't overtaken print product, because it's not easy to play a game. And it's, even if you have word search and all this other stuff, have 48 PDFs open is, it gets a little bit disconcerting, I think. That said, one of the things that we've explored pretty heavily is tablets that would have the entire TLG library on it, where you're going to buy the tablet and everything, all the PDFs are on there, so that it's just a tablet and you can access it relatively quickly. But even then, I do think there's a logistics problem with the PDFs. They're not that easy to play with at the table. I mean, and searching for stuff and you can use them, but it's not any more convenient, I think, than books. So there's no real motivating factor to drive people away from books.
I will interject that the only thing about it I will say when I run my games, I've got a laptop, I've got books, I've got a phone, I got a tablet. It's just about space for me. That's all. So I can grab something up and it's there. If I had like a big round table with books laid out, I would probably just do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I had a guy join my Friday gaming group who was really into the digital end of everything. Like, he had completely sworn off books, and he would try to get on me all the time for having stacks of books. Without fail, every time a rule needed to be looked up, I found it in my book faster than he found it in his heavily bookmarked PDFs. So it could just be me, but I personally still think that books are just a physically superior way to do it. They're more convenient. They're not more convenient in the sense that PDFs obviously take up less physical storage space, like Chuck was saying. But for usability, I think books are still faster and still.
The only thing that I think PDFs have is the word search. It's one of the things we've talked about a lot, is having a master index that could, you hit the word and it takes you to the manuscript. And if we do the tablets, that's hopefully what we'll do. But that's a monstrous amount of work. I mean, that is an absolute monstrous amount of work. And then we, as a publisher, we have to balance the amount of labor and time that we're going to put into something like that based to the outcome. So it becomes, a little bit dicey. So EPUBs, let me touch on that real quick. Storycaster asked, when will EPUB products come out, which is far better than PDF, honestly. So we've done EPUBs with the Nook. We were on the Nook and the Kindle. You can still get quite a few of our titles on the Kindle. EPUBs are notoriously difficult to lay out. They won't take graphics. They don't take tables very well. And it's, in RPGs, they're heavy on both. It became almost problematic. And Peter Bradley, our design guy, worked with all kinds of software. And the Kindle was almost as bad because it didn't take EPUBs, but it took MOBI files. And the MOBI files they don't handle graphics or tables very well either. So it became one of those things where, is it worth the amount of time to relay out the entire book to get that up on the Kindle? So the EPUBs haven't, I think, gotten there technologically or whatever to make it worthwhile. We have the same problem with, we pushed pretty heavy about 2 years ago to get the rules books up on a phone. PDFs, it would be very phone friendly or whatever. But we end up having to lay out the entire book. So it becomes this, we can't take, there's 30 odd books in C&C, probably 4 core books. And if we got to lay that out for every platform that we're putting it onto, it becomes problematic, and your sales have to be extraordinary to make it worthwhile. It becomes this whole thing. So EPUBs, I don't see in the near future unless something changes. And I do believe Kindle is moving to a PDF model. I vaguely remember reading that a couple of months ago, but I'm not going to swear to it. And books are superior, King Kothar shouts.
We've got 4 questions in the queue here. Might want to get those done because we're getting close.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, read that one right there, that last one. About to read.
Is printed books still more sold than the digital copies, or did the proportion in the market change? Actually, I answered that. Yeah, so we're good on that.
All right, the next one then. Yeah, the problem is some of these people are highlighting and you get. Okay, though. Here we go.
What if you were building something for the love of it, i.e., to release it for free? Oh, that I mean, I think that's fine. There's a whole side of the market that does it. Don't they do that on OBS, Jason? You pay what you want or something. There's a
Yeah, and I think I might have one or two pay what you want things up there on my store on drive-through. But I mean, honestly, I think all of us do this for the love of it. Nobody gets into role-playing games because they think they're going to make a fortune. It's a labor of love top to bottom. So that's not a crazy question at all. I say if it's something you love doing, dive in, and if it comes out good, put it up on Drive-Thru RPG and sell it. I mean, that's the beauty of the market we have now. You can just put something up on Drive-Thru RPG and sell it, as long as it's all legal. Make sure you're not stealing anybody else's IP, and you're above board on everything. But yeah, if you love it, do it. That's where it all starts.
So the box sets are interesting. We've done boxes over the years, and frequently, if you go to your traditional game boxes that you're going to see from 1970s all the way up, they're pretty flimsy and they can't take a beating. And I never liked them. We did a number of them. The Castle Zagging stuff was done like that. They look nice, but I never really cared for them. When we came across this company that does these, basically they're shipping boxes that they'll print your stuff on. It was, a dream come true for me, and it allowed us to package all of this stuff together. And what it really allowed us to do is to sell more softcover books into the retail market because of what I mentioned earlier. We don't like to push softcover deep into the retail because of the shelf life isn't there. The box set cured that. Those boxes are stout and sturdy, and those that we release restock pretty regularly. The problem the problem is there's so many contents in those boxes that actually to get them all together and get a large retailer order put together, I have to know that I'm going to have the manpower to do it, because it's not, I mean, we have our own print shop. We make anything soft cover from Trollwood Games is from conception to going into that box is manufactured here. So it becomes a huge thing that I gotta weigh into it and make sure everybody's on board for being here when we're packing and stacking crap. No new versions of those two books, but Jim Ward keeps teasing me with a storyteller's. Damn it! What is it? What are those things? The gods, mythologies, a mythological storyteller. I couldn't remember the mythos or whatever.
That sounds cool.
Which would be, it's awesome the way he's laid it out. So it'd take all of the myths, from whatever various mythologies and kind of weave it all into a giant storyteller's dictionary type thing. It'd be absolutely fantastic, I think. But he needs a co-writer, Jason. Jason.
Dude, I'm in.
All right, I'll tell him, dude, because he's been talking about that for like 2 years. He can't find anyone. I don't know. I never mentioned your name, and I should have immediately. But yeah, it's a fantastic idea. He just needs a co-writer with it.
So, Mr. Hurd had an interesting comment / question. I'm gonna put it in here because I think we ought to talk about that for just.
Perhaps you should build a CNC website that works like D&D Beyond, where the virtual books can be linked and searched as you access your character and campaign. That's one of the things that Chuck and Tim talk about quite a bit with the organized play and all of that stuff, making the resources. And that's one of the things, since we're kind of grinding to the end of this, and I really didn't do a linear thing, it's one of the things that we're pushing forward towards the future of RPG publishing. As much as our past is buried in the distribution model and soliciting to retailers and taking pre-orders, the future's not. The future is in bringing the products to as many people as humanly possible and making it accessible in a crazy, crazy way. And this means accessible on multiple platforms. So that's really the challenge of the RPG publisher going forward, is to make sure that all of this content that we've created, that Jason's created, and even for his own company that's out there for Night Shift games or for Elf Lair games, is available in the many, many directions that people want to snatch it. And that's one of the things that we are working towards.
Yeah, they, and we've got a new server we just built for our home base, our Troll Dens, and one of the things we're looking at doing as we're putting all this stuff in for the VTT, because we're working on an actual system that allows us to spit out code for different VTTs just to instantly put that stuff in there. And as we're putting this content up in the server, the idea is eventually we're going to put an interface on it and do something like D&D Beyond. Probably not as flashy and as fancy because we're trolls, but we want everybody to have a way to access it, yet another way, just like Steve said.
Ours will be under a bridge.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that actually the server, it's one of those things that we've done to let people know what we try to stay on top of things. We've had a lot of problems with, not problems, but just issues with file sharing going back and forth. And I finally got with the bake sauce and said, Chuck and Bake Sauce, and I said, I need a solution that's permanent for this. And Bake said, well, get your own server. And I said, let's do it. So we got our own server, and those will be set up next week. So everyone in the company will now be able to access stuff much faster. We won't have to ask this or that or the other. You can just go in and get what you need and move. And that'll be carried over to you guys as well, to everybody playing the games eventually, hopefully within the next year. I mean, I see a lot of dramatic changes coming in the next year. Jason, I saw a question pop up that's right directed for you. It says, I'll ask one more about when you might be updating A13 through A17 for 5e. That's you, Jason.
Just Steve tells me to do it. Honestly, that's it. As soon as Steve tells me to do it, we'll do it. Because I actually told him that we need to finish that. We have up through A12. And but by the same token, Steve will tell you I absolutely hate converting stuff to edition. So I will complain about it up and down through the whole process. But I do agree that we should do it because it kind of, we need to finish that saga, I think.
Yeah.
And getting that tower done for 5th edition would be very, very cool. Yeah.
It needs, that's actually on the docket for 2021. I'm hoping that by April, my desk is cleared of these back projects that we're wrapping up, which we're going to be wrapping up now. And I want to try to knock out a book a month until Alfstrag is done. It's enough already. People have been playing in it now for a couple of years, and they need to know what's on the next level. And as I finish them, Jason can have his team jump in and convert them and get that stuff out. That's definitely on this year's docket.
That last one there.
Oh, overhaul. I see overhaul of the TLG web store, I believe, is on. Yes, absolutely. Tim and I talk about that at least once a week. That too is another monstrous affair. There's so many products, and there's so many products that interact with one another. And then there's 3 ways of getting it from print to print and video, or print and digital. So it's just a whole lot of stuff that needs. And Tim and I both know. We use Equid. They're a great company, but they don't offer a couple of things that we kind of want to use. So we may be using new software. It's just going to take a massive overhaul. It needs it desperately because there's stuff on there that the ad copy is old. It's not good. Some of it went up just very quick when we were releasing something, and you'll come to a product that says it's 4 years old and it'll go new in the store, and it's not new in the store. So it's just one of those things. So that's definitely on the list.
Plus, lining up the drive-through store. Holy cow! We need like a bunch of gnomes. We need a bunch.
Yeah, that one's another huge. It's interesting. Running an RPG company is interesting. It's bigger and more convoluted than people realize, and there's many sides to it. And there's about 8 of us now that work this pretty much full time. So it's one of those things.
Statler, I can see why Jason doesn't like converting since he mentioned he can do that on the fly at the table. I feel like that's bait, but
I started to post it.
But I did also say that when you're converting for publication, it's a whole different world. When I convert at the table, all I need to know is what the monster's hit dice, hit points, and basic and attack bonus are, and I'm good to go. When I convert to a book, I have to work out the entire 5th edition stats. And for example, like a Castles and Crusades monster doesn't have all 6 ability scores. They don't have strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. I have to work all of that out for the monsters in the 5th edition conversion. So there's just it's the underlying design assumptions are so different that I really have to play, a 5 hit die monster in Castles and Crusades could be a 10 hit die monster or even a 20 hit die monster in 5th edition, depending on what challenge rating it's supposed to be. So there's just a lot to figure out there. That's why converting can be a real pain.
I see Tim stepped in and answered about WordPress. I remember. See, Tim runs the store. That's his area. Both stores, the OBS store and the Equid store. And I remember vaguely doing the WordPress, but beyond that, I don't remember much about it. I remember Tim wasn't happy with it. Yeah, so it's one of those things, and it's not easy. And then once we have to make a commitment of a couple of weeks where we're all going to be buried ankle deep in this stuff to make that conversion. And for that to happen, the player's handbook CKG has to be done, Warden has to be done, MTA 5e has to be done. I mean, there's so many other things that have to be done. Yeah, there you go. It's just, but these are all great problems to have. It's nice to sit here and let you all know that Troller Games has lived through this long evolution of RPG history, and we're so uniquely placed that we've got our feet buried in the past, but certainly our heads moving into the future. And it hasn't changed the direction of the company. It hasn't changed the philosophy of the company or the products that we produce. It's just all new material, and we're just hammering away at it. RPG mail order, RPG mail order company. There you go. Ankle deep. Well, that doesn't sound too deep. Yeah, that's not too bad unless it's quicksand. I have been whispering to Chuck. How do I get to you? Oh,
I'll get you hooked up with him, Storycaster. No worries, buddy.
It's not easy, Storycaster, and it's not. I'm just an idiot. I'll read someone's message and I'll catalog it in my head. Sure. I got to respond to it, and then I never respond. 6 weeks pass, and I'm blah, blah, blah. So
we're coming to the end here. I want to put out a couple of things, guys. We've got a special on our store today for this weekend. If you're into world building, there's 20% off on our world building stuff. They just use that code in the store. Should be a link in there. Yeah, there is. And then our friend Jason Vey and co-Trollord. Let me find stuff. Yeah. He's got a great little sale going on. I couldn't believe it. Was it half off, Jason, right?
Yeah, half off of all my print and PDF night shift products on my store. And then all of my products on drive-through, all the PDFs on drive-through are 50% off.
Yeah, so. And guys, he's still got a few spaces left in his games, I believe. I checked a while ago, so I'll put the link up there. If you're wanting to get one of the games that's left, I recommend you do so. I wished I could. I'm going to try to Sunday morning if my grandbaby would let me free, but either way, I'll be stalking him.
I think I'm actually sold out Sunday morning now.
Oh, great. That's good news. So what's left, I wonder? Let's see. Let me have a look.
Last I checked, I have one this afternoon, and I think Derek's 2 games have.
Yep, there's still 4. Between the 3 tables, there's 10 seats left, guys. So you need to hop into that if you haven't. So the only thing we got left for today is we're going to be back in about 2 hours or something. What is it? I'm lost in the world of time zones.
I clearly lost. I thought this one was at 12:30. So
yeah, 4 Central. 4 Central. And Steve, tell them what we're talking about that day right later on.
What are we talking? So this is the Gygax. We're talking about working with Gary Gygax. So this I'm just going to open it up. I'll talk about just the experiences of working with Gary back in the day. For those of you who don't know, we were his primary publisher from 2000 to 2008 when he passed away. He and I became good friends. Worked together every day for 8 years, and I'm just going to chit chat about working with Gary.
All right, guys, we appreciate. He's also got his game tonight too, so look for that. We will be, just so that to avoid any confusion, Steve's probably going to beat me in the head when we get done here, but we're going to be streaming on the Greyhawk channel for Gary Con for the next panel, but we will be hosting here. If you want to just hop in here and ask questions, we'll get them to Steve on the other channel, so you don't have to worry about hopping around. No big deal. But tonight's game, which is going to be at 7 p.m. Central, he will be on this channel here, and we're going to watch a little blood sport. Should be good.
There you go. And real quick, if you have not, please give us a follow here at Trollord Twitch. We'd love to get your support.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing we can do about it, Jeremy. It's just the way it is this year. It won't happen again, I promise you. But anyway, yeah. So give us a follow and come by tonight to watch some of these guys in the chat die at the river. I don't think he's going to let them make this time. There's not going to be no floating discs, so I don't think they're going to make it.
There's not going to be any floating discs.
No floating discs.
All right. Thank you all for showing up. Sure appreciated it. Love the round robin. It's the best way to do these Twitch panels, I think.
Yep. Lots of fun. Thanks for coming, guys.
Trollord Games. Join the fray.